Last week, in a forest 180 kilometers north of St. Petersburg, Russian engineering battalions were pouring concrete day and night at minus 15 degrees. They were simply curing it. There wasn't a patch of ground left unpoured. Why? Because something had changed on the Finnish border. And for the first time since 1945, Moscow was genuinely terrified of its north. Helsinki didn't declare war. They didn't issue a diplomatic note. They simply announced the number 1 million soldiers by 2031. For a country with a total population of 5.5 million, that means nearly half of the adult male population will be armed. And Russia is panic pouring concrete. This story is about NATO's quietest expansion. But being quiet doesn't mean it's ineffective. On the contrary, the North is currently turning into Europe's most dangerous line. And let me tell you this, what's happening in Ukraine was just a warm-up lap compared to what's coming in Finland. Because this time, you aren't just on the NATO border. This time, you are right inside NATO. And that border is 1,340 kilometers long. Let's rewind a bit. Finland had been a neutral country since 1948. On paper, in reality, it was a country living in the shadow of the Soviet Union, calculating Moscow's reaction to every move, giving rise to the term Finlandization. Finlandization. Quietly submitting to the foreign policy of a large neighbor to preserve political independence. For 80 years, Helsinki maintained this balance. They didn't join NATO. They joined the EU, but stayed away from the military alliance. They traded with Russia, bought natural gas, and welcomed their tourists. Even in 2021, the Finnish government was saying, we are not discussing NATO membership. Then came February 24th, 2022. Russia invaded Ukraine, and something broke in Finland. Public support for NATO membership surged to 85%. The Finnish government reversed 75 years of neutrality policy in a single year. On April 4th, 2023, Finland officially became a NATO member. Moscow's reaction? They said they would take military technical measures. But no one took it seriously because Russia was sinking in Ukraine. However, behind the official statements, there was a silent panic in the Kremlin because Finland joining NATO wasn't just a membership, it was a geopolitical disaster. Look at the map. With Finland joining NATO, Russia's border with the alliance doubled from 754 kilometers to 2,100 kilometers, and the vast majority of this border is just a few hundred kilometers from Russia's most strategic region, the Kola Peninsula. What is the Kola Peninsula? It is the heart of Russia's nuclear submarine fleet, the only warm water port in the north, Murmansk. The heart of Russia's strategic deterrence, its nuclear retaliation capability. If Kola falls, Russia's second strike capability collapses. And now, Finland is right under that peninsula's nose, right in the middle of NATO, being equipped with F-35s. Now let's get to the real crisis. Last month, Finnish Defense Minister Antti Häkkänen made a statement. Quiet, cold, Finnish style. We are increasing our total defense strength to 1 million people by 2031. 1 million. A country whose active army is currently 23,800. But their reserve system is one of the most effective mobilization machines in the world. Every Finnish male serves 6 to 12 months at age 18. And every year they are regularly called up for drills. So this 1 million is not a dream. These are real, trained, armed, ready units. And it's not just the numbers. The equipment is coming too. Finland ordered 64 F-35 Lightning II fighter jets. Deliveries have started. These planes aren't just for air defense. They carry stealth, speed, and long-range strategic strike capabilities. Theoretically, a Finnish F-35 could hit a nuclear submarine base on the Kola Peninsula without ever leaving Finnish airspace. Also, HIMARS, Leopard 2 tanks, NASAM's air defense systems, Israeli-made UAVs, and most importantly, full NATO integration. So Finland is no longer alone. Behind them is the US and Article 5. An attack on one is an attack on all. Was Russia really going to stay silent about this? No, but their options are limited. Because Russia's army is bleeding in Ukraine, over 300,000 casualties, tank and armored vehicle stocks have melted away. The economy is being crushed under sanctions. The ruble is in free fall. That's why Russia is doing the only thing it can, pouring concrete. On the Finnish border, Russian engineering units are building Stalin line-style defensive lines reminiscent of the Cold War. Trenches, concrete barriers, minefields in the 21st century. It's as if they are trying to stop Wehrmacht panzers. But the most tragic part is this: Russia cannot reinforce its troops on the Finnish border because there are no troops left. Every brigade not sent to Ukraine is already in Belarus or Kaliningrad. So, the Kremlin settles for symbolic measures, and Helsinki knows this. That's why they go a little further every day. Last week, the Finnish Chief of Defense said something else. If necessary, we can launch counterattacks onto Russian soil. Defense is not just standing at the border. Meaning, Finland is no longer saying they will just do defense. They are openly declaring that if a conflict breaks out, they could make the first move. And NATO's Article 5 legitimizes this move. And Russia, Putin's official statement, Finland made a big mistake. They will pay the price. But how will they pay? Which army will attack? Which tanks will advance? When T-62s are taking the stage in Ukraine, what will they do against Finland? Answer: nothing, at least for now. Let's connect the dots. Finland joining NATO has permanently changed the European security architecture. But this isn't just a membership, this is the collapse of Russia's northern flank. Look at this fact. Throughout the Cold War, the Soviet Union's safest border was the Finnish border because Helsinki was neutral, but not anymore. Now that border is an active NATO front. And this is not just a military problem. It is a psychological trauma. In Russian strategic thought, the concept of safe space is paramount. Throughout history, Moscow has been invaded from the west, the south, the east. But the north was always safe, not anymore. Now Russia faces a 1,340-kilometer NATO border. And on the other side of that border, an army of 1 million is being built. But the truly scary part is this. This is just the beginning, because what Finland did also mobilized Sweden. Sweden joined NATO in 2024 as well. So now the Baltic Sea has literally become a NATO lake. Kaliningrad is completely surrounded. St. Petersburg is 180 kilometers from Finnish territory. And if a conflict breaks out, Russia thinks it has closed off the sea lanes in the Baltic. But not anymore. Because Swedish and Finnish submarines could hunt the Russian Navy in those waters until morning. So what does this have to do with your life? If Russia makes a military mistake on the Finnish border, NATO's Article 5 kicks in. And then Europe goes to war once again, but this time between nuclear-armed parties. Finland isn't joking, neither is Russia, and there is an escalation risk in the middle that no one can control. History has taught us one thing: wars usually start in a place where no one wanted to start them. Sarajevo, 1914, Poland, 1939. A small spark sets the world on fire, and right now there are too many matches on the Finnish border. Finland learned to live with Russia for 80 years, quietly, strategically, diplomatically. But Putin taught them another lesson. Neutrality does not bring security, power does. And now Helsinki is gathering power. 1 million soldiers, 64 F-35s. Full NATO support. And most importantly, the determination not to be afraid. Russia, on the other hand, is pouring concrete because there is nothing else left for them to do. So where does this story end? I don't know. But I know this. The ice curtain is rising, and it looks like the Cold War never ended. The geography just changed. Until the next broadcast, stay vigilant.